Hi, everybody. I want to share some thoughts about this week's Parsha, Vaera. Vaera, I think, really presents one of the most theologically complex questions that we see from any Parsha, which is the taking away of Paro's free will. Not only do we see time and time again with each Makkah that it reports to us in the Torah that Hashem hardened Paro's heart, but from the onset of this whole Makot and the delivery of the Jewish people from Mitzrayim, Hashem tells Moshe at the beginning of this Parsha that this is exactly what's going to happen, that Paro's heart will continually be hardened and Paro will not let the Jewish people actually leave. How are we supposed to understand that? Isn't the idea that every human has free will is just part of what is supposed to be as the natural order of the world itself? In fact, I thought even more about this question when doing Daf Yomi this week on Pesachim, Daf Nun Daled, on page 54 of Pesachim. It mentions that there are 7 things that were created before the world itself was created. The idea being by the Gemara that there were certain things that sort of needed to be in place for the world to exist at all. One of them is Torah, and one of them is actually Teshuvah, right? Meaning that people always need to have the opportunity to redeem themselves and to always improve on their actions. And the idea of Teshuvah was there even before the world itself was created. So how are we supposed to understand why Paro's ability to do Teshuvah was actually taken away? Now, this could be a series of many, many classes, and I know that many scholars and commentators have tried to solve how exactly this works. I just want to share one small idea that maybe can help us frame a little bit what's actually happening in this story and why Paro's free will or ability to do Teshuvah was actually taken away from him. One of the things that many biblical scholars have actually noted is that there's many parallels in the language of the Makot to the language of creation itself. I don't have the time to go through all of them, and I would love to spend some more time learning all of this with you at some point, but I'll just go through a few of them. So for example, for Dam, in chapter 7, verse 19, it says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Amor el Haron kach mateu netei yadecha al meimei Mitzrayim al naharotam al yorehem ve'al agmehem ve'al kol mikveh mimehem v'yu dam v'yad dam b'chol haaretz Mitzrayim uba'etzim uba'avanim. Right? So in the description of saying how the Makkah of Dam is going to come about, this language of use is of ve'al kol mikveh mimehem, all the gatherings of the water. And in fact, if we look in Bereshit, in Perek Aleph, Pasuk Yud, in chapter 1, verse 10, it says, Vayikra Elokim la yabasha aretz, right? God called to the dry lands of earth, ulimikveh hamayim kara yamim, vayira Elokim ki tov, right? And the gatherings of the water he called seas, and God saw that it was good. So we see this parallel between the mikveh mayim that we see in the creation of water in Sefer Bereshit, in the creation story, with how the Makkah of Dam comes about. First, for the frogs, right, the description here, which is in, again, Perek Zayin, Pasuk Kavchet, chapter 7, verse 28, it says, V'sharatz hayeor, right, that the Nile will swarm, sharatz, it will swarm Sfaradim with frogs. And if we look in Bereshit, Perek Aleph, Pasuk Chaf in chapter 20, chapter 1, verse 20, it says, Vayomer Elokim yishritzu hamayim sheretz nefesh, right? Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures. So the same way that living creatures sort of came out from the waters itself during creation, this is how the frogs came out. And the last example I want to share is the one with the lice, right? Where it says in chapter 8 and in Perek Chet, Pasuk Yud Bet in verse 12, it says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Amor el Aharon, Nitei et matacha, right? Hashem tells Aharon to take the staff, V'hach et afar haaretz, right? And to hit the dust of the earth, and then the lice is going to come out. And if we look in Bereshit, Perek Aleph, Pasuk Chavtet, chapter 1, verse 24, it says, Vayomer Elokim, Totzi haaretz nefesh chaya lemina behema, v'ramash v'chayoto eretz lemina, vayehi chen. God said, let the earth bring forth every kind of living creature. Now, it doesn't have exactly the word dust, but the idea is that the lice come from the dust of the earth itself, and that all living creatures came from the dust itself. So what we see here is that there's really sort of this almost undoing of creation, or one could say almost a new creation that takes place through the Makot. I think the other important parallel here is that we say that creation was done with 10 ma'amarot, right? There's 10 times in that first parak of Bereshit where Hashem says Vayomer, and then something comes into being. And here we have the parallel of 10 makot. And so I think one of the reasons why maybe theologically it is okay almost that Paro's free will gets taken away is because really we're seeing it's a new creation. This is really a new world, what's happening in Mitzrayim during the time of the Makot. And therefore, some of the regular rules of the creation that takes place in Bereshit, including the fundamental of Teshuvah, don't exist anymore in this world. It's interesting to think about, and maybe this is something to ponder over your Shabbat table, why did this have to happen this way? What is it that the experience of our people leaving Mitzrayim and becoming a new nation needed to almost be outside of the regular world of creation and almost needed its own creation? And I think we should think about, the fact that almost God had to recreate the world for us as a people. What does that mean about us and our role in this world itself? That God went sort of, above and beyond to even undo some of the natural order of the world itself, which is what I think we see happens with all of the Makot, right? These are all things that never should have happened. And I think part of Paro not being able to do Teshuvah is part of that with the Makot itself. And so I think we should reflect upon what does that mean for us as our mission as a Jewish people, and what does that mean? How do we partner with God to further the creation that happened in Mitzrayim, not just the new order of the natural world that took place, but what does it mean when we were part of that creation in creating us as a nation? Shabbat Shalom.